gathered to honor and pay respect to Ralph W. Abele, who last year, many of you were present on another very hot day, if you'll remember, as we dedicated the state historical marker to Mr. Abele. It's a year later, and we're once again experiencing a bit of a heat wave. This time we're commemorating Mr. Abele as we mark the acceptance of his archival materials into the Pennsylvania State Archives, where they will be preserved for future generations. So our archivist, David Howard, will talk with you a little more about that in a few minutes. I'd like to acknowledge a few special guests, starting with members of the Abele family, starting with his son Ralph, his daughter, Jennifer Abele Smith, Dr. Daniel Smith, his son-in-law, and his grandsons Tyler and Jeremy. We're delighted that you're all with us today. I'd also like to recognize two of the Fish and Boat commissioners, Stephen Ketterer and Rockwell Holly. They're both sitting right there. We're delighted that you're with us as well. Before we begin the more formal part of the program, I'd like to remind you of Mr. Abele's achievements by reciting the text that's on the historical marker that we dedicated to him last July. And it reads, Conservation Leader and Pennsylvania Fish Commission Executive Director, 1972 to 1987. Abele's resource-first philosophy strengthened the agency's mission to protect, conserve, and enhance water quality, improve fish passage, and increase youth conservation education. Notable achievements included modernizing the Fish and Boat Code, emphasizing conservation enforcement, and leading efforts to restore America's shad to the Susquehanna River. I hope that you'll see that marker. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the day, John Arway, and he's an avid angler, boater, hunter, and I can also say promoter. He's a fisheries ecologist by training, has a BS in biology from the University of Pittsburgh, an MS in aquatic biology from Tennessee Technological University. John's worked for over 30 years for the Commission, primarily in the prediction and assessment of threats to aquatic resources, including in the Commonwealth's waters. Early in his career at the agency, John's first 7 years were under Mr. Abele's leadership. He was personally taught the true meaning of do your duty and fear no one. By the way, I hope you all saw the one-page memo at the back, not the one-word memo at the back. I don't have to get that stamped page. The mantra of the Abele command, and continues to practice and promote the ethic during his tenure as executive director since March 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, John Arway.
Well, thanks everyone. We really appreciate you joining us for this special ceremony today for PHMC and Jim for hosting in the archive building. Also the Abele family for joining us to I guess, insert the records into the official state archive to be preserved forever. It's a special privilege for me to be here today and to be able to speak to you as the Fish and Boat Commission's current executive director and represent not only our staff, all 432 of them, as well as our 10 commissioners, to talk about a man who preceded me in this very position that I'm in now. Ralph W. Abele was the executive director of the Fish and Boat Commission, Fish Commission. Ralph was back before the name changed. And from 1972 until he retired in 1987. I entered the picture when I was hired as a semi-skilled laborer working on habitat improvement projects in June of 1980. It didn't take long for me to meet Mr. Abele since in my job search, I had circulated my resume to family and friends in hopes of landing a job as a fisheries biologist back here in my home state of Pennsylvania after I completed my degree at Tennessee Tech. However, my resume ended up attached to a letter sent by a very influential politician at the time, directly to Mr. Abele with a recommendation to hire me. Well, we all know how that Ralph didn't think highly of political influence, especially on hiring decisions. So I was immediately summoned to Harrisburg to explain why I was using politics to lobby for a permanent permanent position with our agency. Since it was an intentional play on my part, I explained to Mr. Abele that in that ominous looking office and looking at a rattlesnake flag that read "Don't tread on me," that I was not personally involved in this petition, which was a well-meaning favor by a friendly neighbor who had political connections. Well, my defense was understood and I was sent back to Pleasant Gap with a general understanding about how an independent administrative agency should be run. Mr. Abele then politely explained to the honorable representative that he recognized my potential and that political influence would have absolutely no bearing on whether he would choose to keep me or release me. Well, the rest is history, and that is why we're here today. To recognize a man who was a leader at a time when our society and our natural resources needed great leadership. He withstood the threats of projects such as Fox Island Dam on the Delaware River, major flooding of our rivers from hurricanes like Agnes, and dams blocking shad migration on the mighty Susquehanna in the 1970s. Coal mining in another dam called Dock Street in the 80s. And he spoke out specifically about acid rain and hydropower, human population control, I still remember that one, agency merger and the case for autonomy, littering and energy, and even the sacking of timber rattlesnakes. But most importantly, he emphasized in all his messages the importance of a clean environment and the fact that fishing is fun. He challenged politics at local, state, and national scales, and his opinions were heard throughout our nation and Canada, which earned him international respect. He was a commander-in-chief at a time when we needed a strong leader, or better yet, a lord of the fish. The first straight talk column after his hiring was titled "Our Heritage, Our Future," which introduced him as a man who would leave an indelible mark in the Commission's annals and would share a common goal: to retain and maintain Pennsylvania's tremendous waterways resources for generations yet to come. That he did. His last great talk column was titled "The One Who Insists," where he discusses the need for a conservation ethic and encourages us to continue the momentum he started, which is what brings us here today. Today we will preserve the history of Ralph Abele by inducting his records into the Pennsylvania State Archives to be preserved forever. Tomorrow we will continue with their own personal journeys and will forever be influenced by Ralph's teachings. Rest Christ the Sawyer, and we pause for breath.
As the State Archivist, I'm very pleased to welcome you, as for those who haven't been here before, to the Pennsylvania State Archives. The State Archives is glad to have the records of Ralph Abele. Our mission: collect, preserve, and make accessible the records of Pennsylvania's government and manuscripts of individuals, industries, and nonprofits that document the history of the Commonwealth. The Abele records tell a very significant part of this story, a story which began nearly 150 years ago with the appointment of the first fish commissioner in 1866, and the first state board of fisheries followed shortly thereafter in 1873, so 140 years ago. And I see a couple of your commissioners here and they don't look a day over 100. As the Historical Commission was created in 1913, it actually is 100 years old this year. Every year, part of my job is to remind numerous state officials to save their correspondence, their speeches, their diaries, their photos, and other types of records to deposit here in the State Archives. This is the chance to document their accomplishments, to preserve their legacy for posterity. The Abele records do this quite well, and samples of some of the more interesting or informative records are available at the back of the room. A very detailed finding aid for the entire collection is now available online on the website of the State Archives. If you go to pastatearchives.com and enter Abele in the search box, you'll get directly to the finding aid. pastatearchives.com. This finding aid was prepared by one of our artists, Jerry Ellis, and Mairead Mumford, an intern from the University of boxes, but to make them available for people to use them. Every year we have about 10,000 individuals who directly consult a few million pages of the 200 million pages of documents we have here in the state archives, either directly in person or through mail or email or telephone calls. Then we have many hundreds of thousands of additional individuals who are doing research, who consult our finding aids online or the increasing number of documents that we've digitized and placed on our website. The access that we provide to all of these government records is an essential part of having an open and transparent democratic government. The state archives, through these records, helps thousands of individuals conduct their research into a whole variety of topics. Now there's one more set of topics they can research. They can come here and study the papers of Ralph Abele, and they're now an official part of this legacy that's preserved here forever in the state archives. As soon as we're done with the presentations, I'm going to offer a guided tour of the archives, and anyone who is interested in just catch me after the presentations and we'll start the tour.
Yes, because I'm older than my sister, I'm going to go first. Ralph Abele Jr. And from a family point of view, I think I now can speak for the next generation. Our sons are sitting over here, and the next generation is living in Philadelphia. And it's a real touching time to know that the work that you follow, that your father did, is going to be there for the next generation. Because that's really what Dad was all about, in a lot of ways, is making sure the next generation understood what he thought was important. And that's why it's so great that some of the scholarship awardees are here today. He'd just be tickled to know that, because that really is the future of environmental protection. But I was asked to say a few words, too, about what these writings mean to the family. And I'd like to just add one thing, and that is that our mother, Peggy Abele, was a very good writer and a good editor. And while I don't know every single piece that she may have edited and all of it, taking nothing away from my father's writing skill, but my mom was a great editor, and she helped both of us who were growing up. And I'm sure that her precise punctuation and word choice is in a few of the letters, not in the one-word response or in the handwritten note to somebody sitting in the room here about things flying around in the air. But she's an important part of Ralph Abele's story, and I think it's really important that get mentioned. So.
I'm just thrilled to be in a room where people know how to pronounce E-E-L-E. And you'll notice that when I married someone named Smith, so I don't have that problem anymore. Obviously, my brother and I are very proud of our father and what he's done. We don't live in the state anymore, but we now have great children. I have great nieces who do, and we couldn't be more thrilled that you've decided to honor our father this way. Thank you.
I have the honor of closing the program. I knew Ralph probably 10 years before his death. And the first time I got to meet Ralph was, he called me at the Federation office, since I was the executive secretary of the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs. He says, Frank, is the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen's Club going to give testimony to FERC on the shad restoration? And I said, well, and everybody knows how the Federation works. You need 67 counties to give their blessings before you make a statement. And he said, well, it's next week. Well, there was no way that I had the opportunity to query 67 counties. So I prepared the statement, become the executive director of the Wild Resource Conservation Fund. And we were at the Pennsylvania Game Commission on Dairy Street, and Ralph was on the board, Glenn Bowers, and there was a heated discussion on whether the Wild Resource Conservation Fund should anesthetize and do away with the raptor populations. And it was a project that was supported by Lackawanna County Sportsman's Club. Well, Gene Stahl from Erie started a heavy discussion with the gentleman that was supporting this project to start killing hawks and owls again because they were eating our rabbits. And Ralph, in his one-word, one-line statement, is to my right. He hands the letter to me and he says, "Get rid of him." And that's so that was Ralph Hall, and he was a great mentor in my life. He was a great supporter of the Wild Resource Conservation Fund. We did so many educational activities with the Wild Resource Conservation Fund. We produced hundreds of thousands of posters, and it was with Ralph's blessing because he knew that those posters would be in classrooms, and he knew that we were carrying on the nurturing of our students today to protect the future generations of tomorrow. It was that simple. And he voted always in favor of producing our Wild Resource Conservation Fund videos, so we've made thousands of those available to the school. So that was my mentor and a great person, Ralph Hall. Now, we have a few people here today that we now want to recognize as individuals that have and hopefully carry on the Ralph Hall attitude to nurture the land, its air, its water for future generations. Mrs. Delancey, I didn't see her come in. Oh, she's in the back there. She's representing her son Clayton. Clayton's on a bird survey project in northwestern Pennsylvania. He went to Greenwood High School, Ralph's hometown, home school district that he sat on the school board. And he is now going to major in wildlife sciences at Penn State. Tyler Grabowski. Tyler, stand up, please. Tyler's here. He received a grant this year from the Conwell Hagen Catholic High School, and he plans to go to Mansfield and study in fisheries biology. Congratulations, Tyler. Kyle Robbins. Kyle. Well, he didn't come, but he is going to be a freshman at Juniata College, and he hopes to graduate and become a waterways conservation officer like his father, Alan. Over the years, this Ralph Hall Conservation Scholarship Fund was started in 1990, right after Ralph's death, but the first project award scholarships weren't distributed until 91. And there's been great people to sit on this board, the Lenny Greens, the Pete Duncans, and the list goes on. I have a few other trustees here. Wayne Kober is one of the existing trustees this year, and John Arway is a trustee, and Ted Walk in the back, and Gary Moore is here, and Dennis Geis. I see Dennis over here. So Dennis has probably been the nucleus and the longest standing member of the Ralph Hall Conservation Scholarship Fund, but that's how Ralph's mentoring has impressed all of us over the years. And I'd like to say thank you for attending, to all the commissioners and to all the friends of Ralph Hall and to the students that have received the Ralph Hall Conservation Scholarship Awards. Thank you very much.